They rolled up fast, lights flashing, ready to assert authority. But when they asked for ID, they weren't ready for what happened next. In today's video, we're diving into an intense First Amendment audit where a calm and confident citizen stands firm on their rights. The officers, sure of their position, press harder, but this isn't their day to win. Watch as the conversation takes an unexpected turn, exposing how knowledge and composure can make all the difference when dealing with law enforcement. Will the officers admit they're in the wrong, or will they escalate further? Stay tuned to see how this real-life encounter unfolds. If you've ever wondered what happens when someone refuses to back down and stands up for their constitutional rights, you don't want to miss this one. Let's get into it. The scene starts in a quiet parking lot, not far from a busy street. It seems like an ordinary day, until the officers pull up, ready to question someone who's simply recording in public. The citizen, holding their phone steady, doesn't appear to be doing anything wrong. But for some reason, the officers are determined to make this encounter more than it needs to be. They ask for ID, not realizing the person they stopped knows their rights inside and out. With no reason to suspect any criminal activity, the citizen calmly asks if they're being detained or free to go. The officers try to explain that it's a routine check, but it quickly becomes clear that they're not prepared for a conversation about constitutional rights. The tension builds as the citizen refuses to back down, reminding the officers that they're on public property, not obligated to provide identification without cause. But what happens next could change everything. The lead officer shifts his stance, clearly not used to being challenged like this. His partner, standing just a few feet back, crosses his arms and surveys the scene, as if waiting for the moment to step in. If you have nothing to hide, why not just show your ID? The officer presses, his tone firm but laced with frustration. The citizen stays calm, replying with a simple, "Because I'm not required to. What law have I broken?" The silence that follows feels heavy, almost as if the officer wasn't expecting that question. You can see the wheels turning as he tries to find the right response, but the citizen doesn't give him the time. "Am I free to go?" They ask again, their voice steady but unwavering. The officer glances back at his partner, looking for backup, but even the partner hesitates. This isn't going as planned, and everyone feels it. The officer finally speaks, his voice sharper now. "Look, we just want to know what you're doing here." People called in, concerned about someone filming. "Just show your ID, and we'll clear this up." But the citizen stands firm, their calm demeanor unshaken. Filming in public isn't a crime. You know that. If people are concerned, maybe you should educate them about the First Amendment instead of harassing me. The officer's jaw tightens, his authority clearly feeling tested. He steps closer, narrowing the gap between them. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Cooperate, or we'll have to take this further." The tension is thick, each word echoing in the growing standoff. Passers-by begin to notice, some pulling out their phones to record. The officer glances around, realizing they're no longer in control of the narrative. The citizen remains steadfast, their silence speaking louder than any argument. What happens next will leave everyone stunned. Just as the officer takes another step forward, seemingly about to escalate the situation, the sound of another siren cuts through the air. A second patrol car pulls into the parking lot, the new officers unaware of the tense standoff that's already in play. But the arrival of more law enforcement only heightens the pressure. The citizen doesn't flinch. They simply turn to face the new officers, their eyes locked onto the growing crowd of uniformed figures. The first officer, clearly rattled now, gestures toward his new backup, trying to explain what's happening. This person refuses to identify themselves, refuses to cooperate. "We need to get this under control." But as the second set of officers approach, something unexpected happens. One of the new officers, a younger man, looks directly at the citizen, nodding slightly as if acknowledging their stance. He seems to recognize something. Maybe it's the quiet defiance, or perhaps the knowledge that they're standing up for their rights. The tension shifts, just a little, but it's enough to throw the first officer off. He turns toward his partner again, frustration mounting, unsure of how to proceed with so many eyes on them now. The citizen's composure only grows more solid, making it clear that this won't be an easy encounter to control. With every passing second, the stakes rise. Will the officers back down, or will they push things too far? The younger officer steps forward, his eyes locked on the citizen. For a moment, it's as if time slows down. The two exchange a brief, almost unspoken understanding, something the first officer clearly doesn't see. The younger officer's voice is quiet but firm. "You're within your rights to refuse, sir. These officers don't have probable cause to ask for your ID." It's a surprising moment of clarity. The older officers stare at him, then glance back at the citizen, caught off guard. The power dynamic shifts in an instant. The first officer's face reddens, and he opens his mouth to argue, but the younger officer holds up a hand, cutting him off. "We're done here," he says, turning toward the citizen. "You're free to go." The tension breaks. The older officers exchange a look, unsure, defeated. Without a word, they step back, realizing that they've lost this round. The citizen nods, taking a step back themselves. But just as the citizen turns to leave, a third, unexpected twist happens. The younger officer, who had just sided with the citizen, pulls out a notepad and quickly jots something down. "Hey," he says, his voice low enough that only the citizen can hear, "keep filming. You're doing more good than you know." For a brief second, the citizen hesitates, a sense of confusion crossing their face. But then they nod, appreciating the unspoken support. With the sound of the officers getting back in their cars, the citizen turns and walks away, leaving behind the moment of truth. It's a victory, but it's clear that the battle for public rights is far from over. As the camera pans out, the crowd begins to disperse, murmurs of the incident echoing in the air. What started as a tense encounter between one citizen and a few officers has now sparked something bigger, something that could ignite even more questions about the limits of authority and the power of knowing your rights. The city may have just witnessed the quiet beginning of a much larger movement. As the citizen walked away, their camera still recording, there was a sense of quiet triumph in the air. The officers returned to their cars, the tension finally diffused, but the encounter left its mark. Those watching from the sidelines began to talk among themselves, sharing their thoughts about what had just unfolded. Some seemed confused, others inspired, but all of them had witnessed something that made them think about their own rights in a new way. The citizen paused briefly at the edge of the lot, taking a moment to reflect before turning off the camera. This wasn't just about one interaction or standing up to a few officers. It was about making people more aware of their freedoms and the importance of protecting them. Walking away, they knew the video would spark conversations, maybe even empower others to stay informed and confident in their rights. This was just one moment, but it carried a message that could ripple far beyond.